You know, there are certain films that can absolutely, truthfully be described as iconic. And we're here today with the writer, producer, director, editor of, without exaggeration, the most significant LGBT film of its generation, Word Is Out. I'm very honored to speak with Dr. Andrew Brown. Welcome.
Thank you.
And I just found out on a personal note, your family's from my hometown, Richmond, Virginia.
Right.
Nice to see you.
Nice meeting you.
I remember when I was a young boy in Richmond, Virginia, or a young teenager, hearing about this film and going, wow, they're making movies about gay people? I don't know whether to be scared or excited. What was it like doing this film back in the Anita Bryant days?
Right, well, that's part of the impetus for doing it. The executive producer, Peter Adair, who's no longer living, it was his original idea, and he hired 6 other people, one being Rob Epstein, who did the Milk film, his sister Nancy Adair, Lucy Massey Phoenix, and Veronica Silver. That was the core group. And as we moved along, we felt we had a, sort of mission because of the Briggs Initiative, which was happening. They were trying to stop teachers from teaching in public schools.
Here in California?
Here in California. And because of Anita Bryant, who was very public about being anti-gay. So we felt we were on the mission to sort of tell people's stories. And it grew from a very small interview with people in the Bay Area to interviewing people from across the country. Public television had helped finance it, helped finance the film. And today the San Francisco Public Library, it's really owned by the Hormel Library now. The San Francisco Public Library owns the film. But the DVD just came out this last month. It came out last month, and it's being restored and been showing all over the world. So what we thought was going to happen 30 years ago is happening 30 years later. Did
you think it was going to happen 30 years ago? Did you have that much hope for the film and the movement?
We were just hoping to give people hope, because people were, it was a very dark time right after we made the film, and I was in Europe promoting the film. Harvey Milk was killed, the mayor was killed, Jonestown happened, so it was a very dark time in California. But you could see that, and we hoped that it would have a positive effect. We just didn't realize it would happen 30 years later, but we were very happy about it.
When you look at the film now, 30 plus years later, do you feel it holds up?
Well, we hear that it holds up. We think it's the kind of film that you can take to family members, and when it's very difficult to talk about an issue and have them look at it and sort of have a conversation. It can be used in schools. We think it can be used to begin the conversation with people you love. So in that respect, we feel it really does hold up. It's pre-AIDS, so it really doesn't discuss that era.
It's interesting, you bring me to my next question. There's a melancholy to the film, not only because of the period in which it was made, in which you knew it was being made, but the fact that looking back on it, you know that at that point, millions of people were already infected with AIDS, HIV, and 4 years later, we saw it spread across the pages of the New York Times for the first time.
Exactly.
How does that perspective on the film, I don't want to say date it, but place it in a certain context?
Well, I think it dates it in the sense that it was, the health issues are not discussed, and it's a film that talks about sex without talking about sex.
Yes.
So it's a very different film in that way. So it's a film that has many different perspectives, and what we like to think of it as is that it shows many different kinds of people basically going through the same issue, and that gay people are just like everybody else. They're just as racist. They're just as self-centered. They're human beings, let's put it that way.
I remember when I first came to San Francisco in the 80s, they were right down in beautiful, free, Castro, doing a 50th anniversary showing of Gone with the Wind.
Yes.
And I was appalled, and they were flying Confederate flags outside the Castro Theater, and I went on a one-man campaign for the payphone at Cafe Flora, got the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence to say, this is a really bad idea, and this is why. And a dear friend of mine, a black friend from Philadelphia, called me. He heard about it, and he said, David, he said, what made you think that gay people were any less prejudiced than anybody else? But that was an education to me.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think comes out in this film is yeah, we're normal and bad and good in every other way.
Exactly.
Are you in touch? I mean, of course, Peter has passed,
Yes.
a great loss to our community, but are you in touch with any of the original 6?
Oh, yeah, we see each other all the time. I mean, they're my family at this point. They all live in the Bay Area. Well, Nancy, Peter's sister, lives up north, but basically we see each other all the time, and with the release of the film, we're in touch more than ever. We really have a connection that you can't break when you work with somebody for 2 to 3 years, developing something that you really call, you know, your baby. You grow up together, and we all grew up together. I mean, Rob went on the Milk film. The other people are still in filmmaking. I'm not, but they still make films. We're still very close. And with the making of this update, they're all updates of people who are still alive in the DVD, and that's what makes the DVD very special. It talks about what was going on and what happened to those people now. What's happening to those people now?
Who would you like to see this film? Like, if you could get this film in front of one person to say, maybe now you'll get it, who would it be?
I guess the person I would want, the one person or the group?
Either.
I guess the one person I would like to see it are people in my family who I still can't talk to.
So you think there are members of your family who haven't seen this film?
Oh, yeah. I mean, my parents have seen it. They're no longer here. I took them to New York to see it. But we all have people in our families who we can't have a conversation with. So it's a way of not having a conversation, but having a conversation. And it was just on TMC last month, and I called family members who really still cannot talk about it. But, I mean, times change. Even my mother's Baptist church hired a lesbian minister. I thought that would never happen in my lifetime.
Where is
Philadelphia?
This? Okay.
But I thought it would never happen in my lifetime. And my relatives voted for her. So, I mean, it's really, times have changed, but there's still people you can't talk to in your family. So it's the people that you really don't have a connection with, who you don't talk to, who you want to entertain in some way. It's a way of opening the door, let's put it that way, and staying in touch with family members, from my perspective.
You know, hindsight is 20/20, as they say, and so we can all look back and see the progression of our community, the progression of AIDS, HIV, the legislative victories and defeats over the last 30 years. If you kind of, in a macrocosmic way, had to sum up what's been the big change in the gay community between 1977 and 2007, 2010, what would it be? Are we kinder and gentler, or are we a little rougher around the edges?
I think the big change is with really young people, that with the advent of MTV, gay people became visible, from my perspective, that programs like that wouldn't have a reality show without having somebody who's gay. That was unheard of. And young people have just a different view of the world than people from my era. And then when I was in Europe, Europe has surpassed this country in acknowledging gay relationships. When I went there in the 70s, they were a lot worse than we were.
Yeah, my husband is Spanish. He loves, you know, my country had a fascist dictator.
Exactly.
Now we have same-sex marriage.
And it seemed like the country that had dictators seemed to really understand that repression is not good for the psyche, and they have totally gone in the other direction. So in a way, I mean, the first is last and the last is first.
Yeah, I mean, who would have thought that South Africa would have the most progressive constitution of any country in the world?
Especially around gay people. And no one would have ever guessed that. So just because it looks bleak doesn't mean it's impossible from my perspective.
In our last few moments, tell me what you think is the enduring legacy of this film, Word Is Out.
I think it's a snapshot in time when people thought it was going to be very dark. And indeed, for a couple of years after that, it got very dark because of the disease, and that we might actually be in jails. So when things become the darkest, sometimes there's a ray of hope that comes through, and in spite of everything that's going on, really shines through. And maybe it took an Anita Bryant and the Briggs Initiative to really get people mobilized to say, yes, this is a political issue. Which is a big argument back then, whether this was politics or not. If people are trying to stop you from making a living, it's a political issue.
There is no more political issue than how we live our lives.
Yes.
We've been speaking with Dr. Andrew Brown, producer, director, editor one of the producers of the most important documentary of its time on LGBT issues, word is out. I'm David Perry, and this has been 10%.